Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto, Willies. The new Trump presidency hasn't yet begun, and we can already see the clear and present danger that it is going to be. And I want to say something that I don't think I would have ever said, but it is clear, first of all, that a dead 12-hour clock, even a dead 10-hour clock, a dead 12-hour clock is correct twice a day. And I'm going to bring that analogy to the Electoral College. Just maybe, and I want you guys to hear me out, just maybe this is the time where we should use that constitutional aberration, that undemocratic aberration that the founders, for racist reasons, the founders, for the reasons of the power, keeping the elite in power, maybe it is time for us to use that institution for the benefit of us all. After all, Donald Trump, over the last few days since his election, has proven something that Kamala Harris said throughout the election, that this isn't a serious person. This isn't the knowledgeable person. This is somebody that cares nothing about systems, organizations, what will keep people moving forward. He cares nothing about that. But he told us, he said his new presidency is going to be retribution, but forget about the retribution because that affects singularly people, individuals. But when we talk about the collective, all of us, what he's proven right now is that he's willing to destroy what we have fixed since the inception of the Constitution and beyond. The election, suggesting that Chelsea Gabbard should be the DNI Secretary, Director of National Intelligence, suggesting that Matt Gaetz, somebody who's accused of, and there's credible evidence that he participated in trafficking, had sex with a 17-year-old, is probative. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, thinking that somebody so incompetent and such a person devoid of morals could be selected as the defense secretary. And more importantly, for the director or the secretary of the Human and Health Services, the Health and Human Services, to be Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, someone who doesn't believe in vaccines, someone who has such out of scope beliefs in science. And look, the guy does believe in some good things, that the big pharma is terrible. All of those things are true. But mixing some truths with things that would harm us all, that is a clear and present danger, not to a select few, but to the many. And when one goes ahead and think about it, one would say, well, he was elected democratically. And that is so true. The majority of the population from the count so far seem to be that they would have voted for Donald Trump. Unlike 2016, when he lost by 3 million votes, unlike 2020, when he lost by 7 million votes. But again, I digress. The Electoral College has been wrong. The Electoral College is an aberration. But let's be clear here. The Electoral College, if there's one mechanism left for us to save the country, just maybe the Electoral College, and they have December 17th, I believe, before they have to conclude. And for anyone saying, how can you dare say that? Well, we can prove that the Electoral College, when it elected George Bush, changed the trajectory of the United States and is the genesis of a lot of the problems that we have today. From the Iraq war to creating a more massive defense industrial complex to the privatization of wars all over the world. We can show where the Electoral College, by making the president George Bush, created an existential problem going forward for the country. That can be proven based on what occurred under the Bush II administration. It was a clear failure internationally, etc. And then when the Electoral College elected Donald Trump, it was again the master of death. Had we had a competent president, we would not have lost over 1 million American citizens to COVID, because more than likely COVID would have been nipped in the butt before it became a pandemic. So the Electoral College failed by electing an incompetent person, and in the process creating a movement, a cult movement that dummified the population, that made the population less intelligent. Not to speak about having removed us from the Iran nuclear deal, not to speak about having removed us from the Paris Accord, which made sure that we looked like the nation that produces a second amount of carbon in the air was no longer reliable as being one of those who would provide the solution to the problem of the environment, which is likely our most severe problem at this time. But now we get Donald Trump for a second term, and the people that he is appointing are lacking. The people that he's appointed, they in each of those positions themselves, solely in those positions individually, are a clear and present danger to the Americans, to the world. In each of those positions, if health goes awry, it goes awry in America and internationally. If the defense secretary does the wrong thing, he creates the wrong environment, it affects the entire world. The attorney general, if he goes ahead and prosecutes that which he shouldn't, can have a material effect. And Chelsea Gabbard, as DNI, Director of National Intelligence, will ensure that no longer will we get the reports and intelligence reports from all these other countries working in unison to prevent us from being attacked from those who do not wish, for those who wish us harm. And for those who think there's no precedence, there's a very important article to read at the Electoral College at the Brennan Center. And that article titled The Electoral College Racist Origins. Read that entire article. I'll place it in the corresponding blog for this particular post, this particular video. But again, an important article to read, The Electoral College's Racist Origins. But I want to use the argument that from a document that was linked to that particular Brennan story that originally appeared in The Atlantic by constitutional professor Wilfred U. Codrington III. But he referenced an article by William Buckley. Everybody know who's one of the parents of conservatism, or one of the guardians of conservatism. William F. Buckley wrote this article, Yea Yonder. And I want to read a couple of snippets from it. I mean, the article is objectionable. It's a racist article, but I want to show where this article, the snippets from this article, the article is titled, Why the South Must Prevail. And I'm going to use Buckley as a rationale for just maybe the Electoral College doing the right thing on the 17th of December. We're talking about juries, and he was talking about a vote in the Senate, and in effect, he's saying that there are times when juries, the jury of all of us, when we are executing our duties, just may waive the written law. And he says, for the effect of it is, and let us speak about it bluntly, to permit a jury to modify or waive the law in such circumstances as the judgment of the jury requires so grave an interposition between the law and its violator. In effect, it is saying there are times when, and I'm paraphrasing here, there are times when, for specific reasons, the law may not work. And then he has a long prose, and I want you to humor me here as I read it. And some will take offense to this as I take offense to it because, again, it's a racist statement, but I want to read it anyway because the people that he is currently speaking badly about are the people that folks would speak badly about now for having elected Donald Trump, and why maybe we need to supersede that for the benefit of society at large. Check this out. The central question that emerges, and it is not a parliamentary question or a question that is answered by merely consulting a catalog of rights of American citizens born equal, is whether the white community in the South is entitled to take such measures as are necessary to prevail politically and culturally in areas in which it does not predominate numerically. The sobering answer is yes. The white community is so entitled. For the time being, it is the advanced race. It is not easy, and it is unpleasant to adduce statistics evidencing the median cultural superiority of white over Negro, but it is a fact that obtrudes one that cannot be hidden by ever so busy egalitarians and anthropologists. The question, as far as the white community is concerned, is whether the claim of civilization supersedes those of universal suffrage. The British believe they do, and acted accordingly in Kenya, where the choice was dramatically one between civilization and barbarism, and elsewhere. The South, where the conflict is by no means dramatic as in Kenya, nevertheless perceives important qualitative differences between its culture and the Negroes and intends to assert its own. National Review believes that the South's premises are correct. Remember the National Review magazine. If the majority wills what is socially atavistic, then to thwart the majority may be, though undemocratic, enlightened. It is more important for any community anywhere in the world to affirm and live by civilized standards than to bow to the demands of the numerical majority. Sometimes it becomes impossible to assert the will of a minority, in which case it must give way and the society will regress. Sometimes the numerical minority cannot prevail except by violence. Then it must determine whether the prevalence of its will is worth the terrible price of violence. So that sounds harsh, and it is harsh because it doesn't go into the true narrative of the Western world going into Kenya and who are really the barbaric ones. Doesn't tell you. And just as it talks about the civilization in the United States, it doesn't really say who is the barbaric ones, the one who maybe the civilization that actually killed off the Indians, the civilization that actually enslaved people and made and kept them uneducated. So there's a whole lot of narrative that isn't saying there, but we're just looking at this not from an emotional point of view, but a literal point of view. Now, he does end with an interesting statement that I guess softens it a bit. He said the South confronts one grave moral challenge. It must not exploit the fact of Negro backwardness to preserve the Negro as a servile class. It is tempting and convenient to block the progress of a minority whose services as menials are economically useful. Let the South never permit itself to do this. In other words, you don't want to keep down people just for financial sake. So long as it is merely asserting the right to impose superior mores for whatever period it takes to effect a genuine cultural equality between the races, and so long as it does so by humane and charitable means, the South is in step with civilization, as is the Congress that permits it to function. I mean, in effect, he's saying, well, when those minorities or those black people or those natives or when they come up to our when those cultural standards are equal, then then one person, one vote. Okay, look, this is the racist document written back yonder. I mean, it is amazing that this was the norm and this is how people spoke. Okay, and this is what and without narrative, just asserting one's superiority without asserting how one got to be considered the superior one. True violence, true misogynist, true, whatever the case may be. But the reason I brought this article up is we could use this same analogy now to those who decided to elect a misogynist, a convicted criminal, somebody who went ahead and hold on to women by their parts, somebody who was stolen, somebody who has been a traitor to the country, somebody who empirically has potentially sold secrets to other countries, etc. I'm saying, quote unquote, we could use that same analogy within conservative daddy Williams Buckley's document to justify an electoral college that says to save the nation, we must do this. Remember, in this one article, he said there are times when a jury must go against a law. He also states that Well, if you have an uneducated population that is doing something against their interests, even as they don't know it. And he makes mentions of also, but this is a temporary fix just to preserve society. Let me tell you something, folks. A democracy requires good thinking, educated people. We can have discussions on whether to have big government and small government. We can have discussions on whether we should make abortion legal or not legal. We can have discussions as far as where we want controls to be. What we cannot have discussions about is whether we can watch our country go down the drain, watch our country lose, watch a majority of the people be placed in a condition where they're failing. Look, if we were solely run by a majority vote, as many believe in, as I believe that we should do that most of the times, except for, again, folks, inalienable rights. But an inalienable right is a right to continue to exist. An inalienable right is one that allows for, as the Constitution speaks about as well, is the goodwill of us all. And what has been done by the election of Donald Trump denies that, and there is one mechanism left, a mechanism that we ultimately want to go away, but a mechanism that I said, but a condition in this country that would not have occurred if that particular mechanism hadn't failed in the first place with Bush 1 and Trump. Bush 2 and Trump. That mechanism laid the foundation for what we have today. So to use that mechanism to save the country, maybe that deserves some thought. If we have 10 bushels of corn and the population is uneducated and some people are still left marginally hungry but survivable, and we say, no, we cannot eat this bushel of corn, because if we eat this bushel of corn, we don't have corn for the next year and the next year, etc. And the uneducated person would be like, I'm hungry right now. I want to eat that food right now. They don't see the reason that eating that corn right now will ultimately kill civilization altogether. That is why we need at times corrective measures. And this just may be time in the history of America where that corrective time is needed. I would love to hear your thoughts. Soliloquy time. The Republicans would have you believe that most Americans are slouches. They'll have you believe that somehow the plutocracy, those people on top, they have to be watching every single American to make sure that you're out there busting your butt and working hard, and that everything that you ask for from we the people, your government, is a handout, and that no, you don't need any handouts. You need to go out there and work for it. Hey, look, I'm going to tell you something from somebody who's from Central America, from somebody who's been all over the world, from China to the Caribbean. Let me tell you something. The hardest workers I have ever seen in my life, bar none, are Americans. The least greedy people I've seen are Americans. But what is a problem is we are governed by psychopaths. And just like, we've heard about the good girl kind of having affinity for or kind of liking the bad guy when they're growing up, Sometimes you wonder, the good guy sitting down there in class and, he treats the ladies well. And this, I swear I'm not being sexist. I'm just kind of hear me out. They some of the ladies kind of like the bad guys when they're growing up. But as they mature, they settle down and realize, you know what? The steady hand, the good person, the person who cares is what you want. That's how I look at America so often. Sometimes we go for that bad guy being male or female. Sometimes we go for that bad guy, not knowing deep inside that it's bad for us, but we keep doing it. Look, most Americans, I repeat, are hard workers, but most of the people who profit immensely, not the regular grocery store owner or the McDonald's franchise owner or the Whataburger franchise owner or the Burger King franchise owner.
they're fine. They have a few $1 million in their pockets. They're fine. They're good people. They hire, etc. But the real parasites in our economy, the real people that take advantage of all of you outside, all of you within our country, are those psychopaths, those billionaires. And yes, most of our billionaires are psychopaths. I mean, no one person has earned $1 billion. No one person can make $1 billion. It is all what's known as excess labor. All the money they have is money denied you. But they would make you believe that they have some innate intelligence, some innate intellect that make them so good to be worth what they have. Because we have been programmed to believe that the way our economic system works is the best and is how things are rewarded. I am here to tell you it's not the case. When you go outside and you see that garbage man throwing the garbage into that truck, making minimum wage, making less than a living wage, and he makes or she makes your life more livable. Think of not having that person there and what happens to your street after a month, after a couple months. It becomes unlivable. Think about that person sweeping the floors. I mean, we have a tendency to believe we're worth more than we're worth. Oh, I'm an engineer. I make a lot of, well, not anymore, but, engineers make a good amount of money, right? And, you go out there and you go out of your office and there's a janitor there. And some of these guys would have a tendency to, look down at some of these folks, hey, I'm the engineer, I'm the lawyer, I'm the this, I'm the that. But get yourself in need of something and you realize how interdependent we are and how arbitrary what we pay, how we live really is. A teacher, the most important profession on the planet, bar none. I repeat, the teacher, the professor. These are the most important professions, bar none. They are the ones who move knowledge forward. Without the teacher, there ain't no engineer. Without the teacher, there ain't no doctor. Without the teacher, there ain't any of the things that make society move forward. Yet, the way we partake of funds, the teacher doesn't come close to being valued as they should. But the stockbroker, who is nothing but again, by definition, I want you guys to not just take my words. Think about the definition of, let's say, a parasite. A parasite is something dependent on something that is stable and sucks the life out of it or sucks a lot. There are two kinds of parasites, right? There's a parasite that actually kills, and there's a parasite that is just dependent on. And in the case of the stockbroker, in the case of many professions that make a whole lot of money in our society because of the way we have defined things, these parasites are just dependent on but produce nothing. The stockbroker, dependent on but produces nothing. Many executives in corporations depend on but produces nothing. Yet they control our government, right? Because they pay the monies that they've stolen from you. And notice I've used the word stolen. And by the way, I mean that literally. The money they've stolen from you, they use and they bribe the politicians to get their will. So now that, brother, and by the way, this is across party lines. I'm very frank. They both are owned by our corporate state. Every party is owned by our corporate state. Every single one. But the difference is at least the Democratic Party gives you some crumbs. At least you get some crumbs, right? At least we got the Affordable Care Act that most Americans, even though they were for a while, the evil ones tried to make you believe that something good for you was not good. You got it anyway, and now you can't live without it. And we have the new people back in power again. And it's all on again, as Jack was pointing out, with SNAP and all these other programs. Do you really think SNAP is a problem or being abused? Somebody finds 2 or 3 people who go and buy steaks with their SNAP or go buy all these expensive things with their SNAP. They highlight it, they make it a story, and they paste that on to every single person who's on SNAP. Food stamps. But you know what? If you want to know where the people are on food stamps, and if you want to know how much food stamps really cost compared to the tax cuts that they're given to wealthy people who are undeserving because said wealth was aimed or gotten on your back? No. But interestingly, we told you so. Before the election, we told you so. And I'm going to say we told you so. I think it is time for us to hold Americans accountable. We all have to be held accountable for our votes. But we told you so. Right now, and this is the article that Brother Jack was referencing. Remember, during the Trump administration, the first administration, he gave a huge tax cut. He made the tax cuts for corporations and wealthy people permanent. But the pennies, and notice I said pennies, because the tax cut that you got in the Trump administration, which was minute, few dollars a week, something you don't even see, was all eaten up by the increase in cost, not only by inflation. Well, every increase in cost is inflation. By the reduction that you got in services from your doctors and the larger deductibles that you paid, etc. It was all eaten up. It was all eaten up by that. In other words, the little tax cut that you middle folks got, we menial folks got, that was all eaten up. And guess what? Whenever we say that was eaten up by the extra deductibles that you pay, the extra costs in food, etc., that was saying the following. We gave the tax cut to the wealthy. We gave a little tax cut to the middle class. We raised the prices on the middle class, and the rich people took the money right back from the middle class in the form of higher prices that ate up their tax cut and any wage gain that they got. So once again, our masters got us, and we turn our butts and say, kick me one more time. Kick me one more time. At some time, America, we have to wise up to the game. We have to wise up to the game. They giveth and taketh away from the poor. They giveth and taketh away from the middle class, and it's only one class that makes it. You know, Dr. Theis, who, as part of the Houston Peace and Justice Center, we gave him an award, a Peacemaker Award, last weekend. And he came on to my 3:00 show, and we started talking about what's going to happen, etc. And he pointed out, we have to change the narrative. People don't like to hear that it's class warfare, but it is time for us now to acknowledge that we are, in fact, having a class warfare, and the middle class and the lower classes are losing. A bigger part of the pie continues to go to the wealthy. And this is by design. And this is by design. This is by misleading you, disinforming you, and you making the wrong choices. The choices that continues year after year to take what you have earned, It's hard to accept, but in many of the other soliloquies that I've done, I've pointed out that the techniques are well known. The techniques that the plutocracy uses, the oligarchy uses, the wealthy, the people who control our economy uses. It uses all our insecurities to get it done. And in the case of the Kamala versus Trump election, they use to maximal effect gender, race, and the permanency of the patriarchy. This election had nothing to do with the economy. The economic message was simply a cover for people to be able to execute on their innate prejudices. That's the answer. All the complexities that you see on TV, the Democrats didn't come out with the right economic answer, and all these things, all of that is hogwash. None of that matters. It's all hogwash. But it turns out, I will say it once again, we told you so. And now that we have a new president-elect. And now that the policy that he is going to effect on day one is coming to fruition, remember, that is what we elected.
There's a chance every single crackpot that Donald Trump so far has nominated to be in his cabinet or to run HHS or all these different agencies will get through. And the reason why is that none of the senators, none of them have any spine. They are, in fact, sycophants to the president, and they are more scared of the president than they are patriots. We know that Senator Mark Wayne Mullen actually thought that Matt Gaetz, the nominee for Attorney General, was a disgrace, was a not only a disgrace, but an immoral character who committed crimes, who took underage kids over state lines, etc. And now, listen to what he has to say and listen to how he comes and appeases Donald Trump, how he comes and talk about Matt as if he is a normal guy. This is the problem with what we're seeing today. This is a problem why Donald Trump is likely to get all his nominees through. And let me tell you, earlier on, I did a piece about maybe the Electoral College could be right. Given that the Electoral College, a dead clock can be wrong twice, a 12-hour dead clock can be right twice a day. Well, the Electoral College was wrong when it elected Donald Trump the first time. The Electoral College was wrong when it elected George Bush. And you know what? Maybe the Electoral College could do something right and prevent the disaster that is about to happen here. But listen to how Mullen has really changed over the last few days. Take a listen. We'll be right back.
Republican Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma. Senator Mullen, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me on, Kristen.
Well, thank you for being here. I want to start with former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who, of course, President-elect Trump, as we just said, announced this week was his pick for Attorney General. You have said you trust Mr. Trump's decision-making in naming Gaetz, but you have been critical of Gaetz as well. Here's a little bit of what you've had to say.
We had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. And he walked up to me as Kristi Noem, now Governor Kristi Noem. He said, man, she's a fine, and you can put the B word in place there. This is the type of individual Matt Gaetz is.
So, Senator, you clearly have questions about Matt Gaetz's character, but do you believe that Matt Gaetz is qualified to serve as Attorney General?
You know, there's no question that Matt Gaetz and I have had our differences, and that's no secret. Moving forward, I do respect President Trump's the right to appoint these individuals, but underneath Article 2, Section 2, Congress has to advise and consent, and Matt Gaetz is going to go through the same scrutiny as every other individual, and I'm going to give him a fair shot, just like every individual. And at the end of the day, the Senate has to confirm him. I do think it's a very, very tough role. I've got a tough situation that I've got to set my personal opinions, and they're really not opinions. I got to set my personal situation with Matt to the side and look at the facts. If he's qualified, he's qualified. I be quite frank, I didn't even know he was an attorney until after he was appointed Attorney General, and I had to do my research on him. And I know that's crazy because I served with him, but I just never did the dig to find out actually his actual degree, what it was in.
Well, and speaking of digging into his background, the House Ethics Committee was about to release the findings of its investigation into allegations of misconduct by former Congressman Gaetz. Of course, he abruptly resigned before that could happen. A number of your colleagues, including members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, have said they would like to see that report. Should the House Ethics Committee release that report, Senator?
Absolutely, and I believe the Senate should have access to that. Now, should it be released to the public or not? That's I guess that will be part of the negotiations, but that should be definitely part of our decision making. Once again, I go back to it in Article 2, Section 2 in the Constitution. The Senate has to advise and consent these individuals. And in that process, we're going to give Matt Gaetz the same chances we'll give all President Trump's nominees. And by the way, I do believe that President Trump has the ability to pick some really, really good people. You can see why he's been successful in business, why he was successful in running his campaign, because he surrounds himself with the right people. So I have no doubt that President Trump believes that Matt Gaetz is the right person to do the right job. But at the same time, the background of Matt Gaetz does matter, and what the decisions that the Senate makes has to be within our boundaries of the constitutional authority that we have, and we will do our due diligence there. And I'll say this: Matt will be treated the same as every nominee out there, from myself and every other senator out there.
And you say background matters. I want to ask you about his views. Here's a little bit of what Matt Gaetz had to say last year about the very law enforcement agencies that he is poised to be tapped to oversee. Take a look.
We either get this government back on our side, or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them, if they do not come to heel.
Senator, do you support getting rid of the FBI, the DOJ under any circumstances?
No, I actually agree with what Matt was saying there. As hard as that is for me to say that, I actually agree with him, because what he's saying is that they were either come to the side of the American people and quit playing politics. The DOJ and the FBI has been politicized. There's no question about it. We've seen what they've done to President Trump. We've seen the attacks that they continue to go after him with. The DOJ is 100% weaponized. You saw the FBI and the fake Russia hoax. You saw the FBI shielding the Biden family.
Well, and worth noting, of course, Hunter Biden has now been convicted on federal charges. The charges that were brought against President-elect Trump were brought by...
Absolutely, yes, to get there.
Let me ask you broadly, though, do you support the president-elect telling his attorney general to prosecute, to go after people he considers to be his political enemies?
The president didn't say that. That's being taken completely out of context. And President Trump hasn't been the one that weaponized the DOJ to go after his political enemies. President Trump did not do that when he was in office the first 4 years. He could have clearly done that against the Clintons if he wanted to. He didn't. Who did weaponize the DOJ was the Biden administration. We saw them continuously going after President Trump.
Senator, it's worth noting there's absolutely no evidence that President Biden had anything to do with the federal charges brought against President-elect Trump.
Now, can you believe that? Does that make any sense? You have to sit back, and these are grown men. And Donald Trump is an inept, immoral criminal. And these guys acquiesce to everything that he wants, everything that he does. And it's not like he won this electoral landslide where people are going to love him. The fact of the matter is, folks, a lot of people didn't vote. A lot of people didn't vote. Are you willing to destroy the country out of your fears? We have a lot of work to do. And progressives, we have to engage. We cannot disengage now. More than ever, the country needs what we're doing. And folks, we have to support those of us doing this work, because more than ever, this is what we need to get done. Donald Trump says he's going to start on day one the deportation, the disruption to get people out of the country. And now California farmers are starting to get worried, because California produces about 25% of all our goods. And the kind of work that's required to produce all those vegetable goods, plant goods, etc. The truth of the matter is, no matter what you pay, you can't get Americans to do that kind of work. You know, again, we've moved away from training people to do all kinds of works, because we have exported everything and we have imported all kinds of things to solve what we've learned or taught people not to like to do anymore. And what that means, if Trump is successful in starting this deportation, look, I mean, he's going to destroy his own administration by doing this, right? Because again, what's going to happen is it's going to be that prices are going to go through the roof, because there's going to be, like happened in Georgia when they started getting rid of people, and like happened in Florida
The construction industry is just about destroyed because of the immigration issue. And in Georgia, the peaches are left on the ground because of the immigration issue. It's about to happen throughout the country, assuming Donald Trump doesn't get paid off to just give a facade of throwing people out. Because remember, the man is a con man. I had on my show yesterday where I said, I am not really sure that the deportations are going to occur as you think. I think they're making a big hoopla out of it right now, and they are going to round up a few criminals that they call criminals to make a big picture out of it. And in the background, I think they will be taking bribes, and these are the bribes that they're going to take, in my opinion. This is opinion, folks. I separate opinion from facts. I separate opinions from facts. What I'm giving you now is an opinion, not a fact. It's an opinion. All right. My opinion is the following. Donald Trump is going to get paid off for the private sector to create detention centers, and that's going to be used as a cost center to enrich a few, to lock up a whole lot of folks that they can somehow say you're a criminal, or that doesn't have a marginal effect on our agricultural sector, where we actually need a lot of labor. So I think they're going to give a big hoopla to show that they're locking people up because they think you want to see that. They think you want to see us harm those immigrants that came over the border looking for a better life, that you want to get rid of them, that you hate them, that you want to do the non-biblical thing, that when Jesus said open your hearts to these people, the evangelical Christians have said otherwise, against the Bible, of course. But you are going to want to get rid of those people, and they think that you want to see those people on buses and kicked and thrown into these detention camps. That's what they think you want to see, and they're going to make you see that. So they're going to enrich quite a few people by showing you that they can be evil to those others, those people that walked across the border, number one. Number two, in the background, they will be taking bribes from the big agricultural industrialists. Hey, turn a blind eye, guys. Turn a blind eye. Let my people work and get the crop out. Turn a blind eye. I'll donate to your campaign. I'll donate to the RNC. I'll do all these things. Anybody doesn't think the possibility exists that this deportation machine is not about destroying the agricultural sector, because that is like hurting yourself, but to be in a position to bribe, to profit on somebody else's back. The typical thing the capitalist does. That is what again, folks, that particular part of my narrative is not fact. The first part was fact. This part is opinion. We'll see if it occurs. So again, we told you so. We told you these are the machinations that were going to happen. And as we just showed from all reporting, it has started. His administration has not yet started, but you have to come into the administration with policy, and the policies that are out there are saying he wants to maintain the tax cuts, and he has to find the monies from somewhere, because again, the deficits and the way the financial sector is set up, he has to find the money somewhere. And that money comes from whom again? From you. All those benefits that you get, that adds up, and they have to get it from you. So my brothers and sisters in Appalachia who overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump, remember, you are the poorest part of this country. You are the ones receiving the most food stamps and other support from our government. And it is you who will be paying the price to ensure that these wealthy politicians, or these wealthy industrialists, wealthy capitalists, wealthy oligarchs, continue to get the tax cuts that they have gotten. And for all of you who said, hey, I voted for Donald Trump because he said he was going to not tax my tips. Let me remind you, if you've ever filled out your 1040 form or your 1040 easy or whatever, guess what, brothers and sisters? Your tips weren't taxed anyway. That was a promise not worth the money it was stated on. And let me tell you why your tips was never ever taxed. Your tips weren't taxed because every American citizen gets I think it's a $23,000 write-off up top. deduction up on the top. On your top line. And unless you make so much in tips that it pumps you into the $60,000 to $70,000 category of income, you didn't pay taxes on your tips anyway. So it was a promise that sounded good, but here's where the promise makes sense. When Kamala Harris said, I am going to also not tax tips, she made sure to talk about it being for service workers. But she made sure that stockbrokers couldn't use it. But guess what? The no tax on tip is just another leverage from the parasites that do no work in our economy. Not the server who serves you your platter at the restaurant, but for the guy who said, I am going to start making the income that I earn from helping you with your stock, from being your financial planner. That's now going to be a tip. Will you give me a tip? They didn't put a limit on the tip, and now I get a new tax break for millionaires. Folks, we continue to be played. And as long as we allow ourselves to be played, we'll continue to get played. Don Lemon did something very important in his interview with Katie Fang today. And I think it is something that what a lot of folks who watch the mainstream media every day for their news, etc., I think it does a very important thing. First of all, it puts the mainstream media, it scolds the mainstream media to do what they need to do to free themselves up, meaning the news side of the mainstream media. But also it encourages the audience at large to really do something very important, and that is support independent media if what you want is unadulterated truth. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Your streaming show is amazing. I catch you on IG Live as well. You're obviously an accomplished author, but I mean, how important is it then for independent media going into the second Trump presidency? Especially, for example, you clearly have left Twitter. You've left Elon Musk, gone to Blue Sky, for example. These are the digital town squares. So not only can people get their information here at the Katie Fang Show, but they can also get it from you and other independent media platforms. How critical is it to make sure that that voice is allowed for you and others to be able to disseminate the facts, especially going into this next presidency?
Well, it's critical for us to get attention to those of us who are in digital media and may not have the platforms that, you know, a Joe Rogan or whatever. But it's critical for us as journalists. It's tough in independent media to sell, quite frankly, journalism and politics. Advertisers don't like it. You know what I mean? They're afraid of, Republicans buy cereal or Democrats buy, and they're afraid of it, right? Remember what happened with Bud Light. But I think it's even more critical for people like you who are in corporate media to be able to be allowed to speak the truth, to speak truth to power, even when the folks above you, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps above you, all the way up to the owner of the corporation or the shareholders, when they may not agree with what you're saying, when they may want another narrative out there other than what you as a journalist should be putting out there. It's more important that we pay attention to that rather than, I think, independent media. I think independent media is going to do what they do because we don't have a corporate overlord. And we can basically say what we want to say. It's important to support independent media. It's important for the folks who are watching here, important for the people who just average everyday Americans to support. But I think it's more important that you, since you still do in this corporate media game that you still have a big influence. It's a waning influence. I'm going to be honest. We know that this was a streaming election, but still have the big influence that you are able to say what you want to say and what you think is right as a journalist. It is also important, I believe, for journalists who are still in corporate media to get rid of the false equivalency. Just because some things are objectively bad. A lot of what Donald Trump offers, quite frankly, most of what he offers to America is objectively bad. And because you point that out, it doesn't mean you have to point out something that's bad about the other side because you feel that you need to give balance. That's false. And that's a disservice to the American people. And I think many journalists now feel that they have to do that. I also feel, and I know, that in the back of journalists' heads now, they are thinking, what is my boss going to say if I go in, if I'm tough on a Trump surrogate? Are they going to think that I'm being too harsh on someone unfairly? Are they going to be upset because the guys at the top want, they want to survive in a business environment under a Trump administration? So I believe the problem, if you really want me to tell you, I believe the problem with corporate media now is that there is no wall between the journalists and the folks on the business end. Journalism should not be about the folks on the business end. They should leave the journalism to journalists and the business folks to take care of the business and not rely on the newsrooms and the journalists for corporate profits.
Well, I'm proud to say that there is a wall here at the Katie Phang Show. And I, as Katie Phang, am listening to what I think
that's why I love you
is
and I
my
watch
true
you.
north, which is always facts and evidence, which is how I was trained.
Why it was so important, or it is so important for somebody like Don Lemon, who was a revered host at CNN, to come out and point out what he did, specifically that those in the corporate media, in the mainstream media, they have corporate overlords which restrict what they can say. He also points out that no longer is there a division between the media corporate side and the news, which used to be fairly independent and didn't have to care for how they delivered the news. That separation is no longer there. So he is urging implicitly that separation be there again. But most importantly, he encouraged the likes of Katie Phang to go out there and, in as much as it may give angst to the leaders on the top of the corporations, telling the truth all the time, that you must find a way to do it. Katie points out that, I do that. She points out that is who she is. But what's important is we know the restrictions of the mainstream media. We know that they can't go too far to one side or the other. But we also know that when it comes to that one deep penetration, in other words, while we can have thousands of us in the independent media doing our work and getting, 50,000 people here, 20,000 here, 100,000 here, one of those shows on MSNBC can pick up at once 3 million, 10 million, whatever. So he urges them that in as much as the corporate overlords want you to restrict what you say, want to create that false equivalency between the left and the right, or false equivalencies between folks. If you challenge one, you're required to find some reason to challenge the other. You have to go against that urge for a false balance, for a false equivalency. I think that's important. I think what he said there is so important. And luckily, MSNBC is one of the few stations that rightfully do that. We have Phang that does it. We have Ali Velshi, who is a master of really figuring out how to tell the truth and not get dumped from the air like Mahdi Hassan, if you will. And you also have Ayman Mohayedin, who figures out a way to let you know the truth, not necessarily in the absolute terms that it need to be said. Well, after all, you have the independent media to do that. But the fact that a former host at CNN will come out and first of all point out these deficiencies within the mainstream media, and then urge the support of independent media. And he himself now is a member of us all, a member of the independent media. I think it's a very important thing. So I want to thank Don Lemon. He did a live recently, and I spoke a bit to him on the live, congratulating him for the great work he's doing with independent media. But again, having somebody who did the mainstream media come out into the independent media in the form that he has. I mean, Mahdi Hassan has as well too. But again, a mainstreamer like him
will make a difference. And I hope all of you that are listening heed the calling and support those of us that are out here really doing our job to make sure that you get the unadulterated truth, that you don't get false equivalences, that you don't get the media that the corporate overlords want you to get, but that you just get the unadulterated truth. A reason why independent media needs your support however you can. Let's go to Brian.
No, thank you.
Tell me what you want to tell me today.
Okay, the left-leaning, left-wing news media machine. There's a lot of reports out about how bad Donald Trump is. Like 93% of it is bad. Now, someone took a fire incendiary device and dropped it in 2 to 3 voting drop ballots in Washington and Seattle, Portland, and on it said Free Palestine, and burnt all those ballots up. Did you hear about that?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be on the front page news how bad everyone would be screaming if it said Trump 2024?
No, because let me tell you, because we don't have. Let me tell you why that's not the case. Because the way terrorism and all these things work is a lot of times you go ahead and you look. I can envision that was done by MAGA. Okay. And they just put a free I'm not saying it is. I'm saying I could envision that in order to create a narrative that they would put free Palestine on an incendiary device to create exactly what you're doing right now and putting this on. What I'm saying with that, what we need is to do is investigate it and find the person who did it. We have the car. We know the car that was there. We probably need to see if we can find somewhere to trace that car and get a plate so we can associate it with somebody. It'll happen, and then we'll be able to talk about it. But right now, all we're doing is speculating. Now, the things that we talk about Donald Trump, there's no speculation about it. We know that Donald Trump, through his own words, say that he can grab onto women's private parts without them having any resort and without them not being able to do anything because he's a star. We know that he stole money from people who subscribed to his Trump University, which wasn't really a university. He conned them out of the money. We know that he didn't pay his employees at Mar-a-Lago and other places. He stiffed a lot of his contract workers. We know that as he's fighting against illegal aliens, he called them. We know that he's hired quite a few undocumented workers in Mar-a-Lago and everything else. We know that the person has raped a woman, according to a judge. We know that he stole a lot of money from not paying his taxes, for over appreciating his properties. So we can go on and on and on and on. And these things are not speculations. These are statements of fact. When you talk about the incendiary bomb, that is not yet investigated, but everything with Donald Trump has been investigated. All right, Brian, I got to go, but finish. Give me a last sentence.
Of course you got to go. Of course
No. I'm telling you, give me a last sentence. I'm giving you the opportunity to say something else, but I'm saying we are near time. Continue, my brother.
Don't see the difference between how everything is bad when it's Trump. Everything
is
don't. Bad.
Well, again, if the guy is bad, everything is going to be bad about him. If he were good, things would be good about him. I can't find anything good to say about Donald Trump. I've tried. And again, so if there's nothing, please, I tell you, I got to go. Brian, I got to go, but I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Brian, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor to give you fair play. Make a list of the good things about Donald Trump and tell me about it on Monday. Okay? I got to go. Tell me on Monday, make your list, and we'll talk.
Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It. As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto, Willies.
Welcome to Politics Done Right,
I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.